Hello, I'm Mark Siegrist sitting in for Dan Jones. Thanks for joining us. The issues keep piling up for Barack Obama. Is he already a lame duck president? And how tough is too tough when it comes to cracking down on drunken driving? The UW System's Rainy Day Fund comes under fire, and a new kind of boot camp is being held this weekend in northern Wisconsin. Avi insisted that we do that topic today. But first, let's meet our roundtable. Kevin Fisher is a former broadcast journalist, now political analyst, and a frequent host on News Talk 1130 WISN. Avi Lank is a longtime Milwaukee business reporter, now an essayist for WUWM Milwaukee Public Radio. Gerard Randall has yet to land his own syndicated talk show, but meanwhile he is an educational consultant and job creation expert. Rick Horowitz will be contributing some special thoughts at the end of our program as well. Okay, now on to topic number one. The Obama administration is on the defensive. Political fallout from the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Benghazi is still thick. The Justice Department seized phone records from AP, raising issues over freedom of the press. And the IRS is accused of unfairly targeting conservative groups for evidence of wrongdoing. So, what's going on, Avi?
Well, you know, this is part of the fruit of President Obama running such a clean administration for the last 5 or 6 years. My friends over here and their colleagues in the conservative part of the political spectrum have been trying to find something they can bite into this man ever since, even before he took the oath of office. And he's finally given them some ammunition, or his administration has given him some ammunition. What went on at the IRS is so incredibly stupid, I cannot believe that it came out of the Oval Office, and I don't think there's any credible evidence that it did. And it looks like he is taking the steps to clean it up. And you've got, you know, shoot me, but I have a little bit of sympathy for some of the IRS officials in all of this, because they were confronted with trying to enforce a law that was being manipulated, not illegally, but manipulated by some very shrewd legal minds who wanted to find a way to keep the donors to political action committees private. And following the Citizens United decision at the Supreme Court that said people could spend unlimited amounts of money on, and corporations on political campaigns, a lot of corporations didn't want their names associated with this. Lawyers found a way to say, use this particular section of the law, 403C4, and they don't have to. You don't have to say it. These are venerable. They've been around for a long time. The ACLU is tax exempt under this particular provision, but it was now they were being inundated with an awful lot of applications about it. They had to figure out a way. They say they had to figure out a way to try and decide whether, because if you're primary political, you can't get this designation. You have to apply under another section where you do have to reveal your donors. And as bureaucrats sometimes do, they overreached and they started asking questions they shouldn't have asked. But you know, there's no credible evidence at all this is getting its way to the White House. It just happens to have happened at the same time as some of these other things. And you know, I have a feeling that 6 months from now, most of this is going to have gone away, and the president will be able to get back on his horse and ride forward.
Incidentally, Rick Horowitz has an interesting take on this very topic in just a little bit, but is the administration beginning to unravel a bit?
Yes. Unlike Avi, I'm not going to be an apologist for this administration and for some of the knucklehead things they've done. With respect to the IRS, I think it raises the specter, even if you want to blame it on incompetence or overreach, it raises the specter that you've got an agency that's run amok. They're about to get even more responsibility with regards to the administration of the health care law. People are already on pins and needles regarding overreach by the IRS should they step in and want to aggressively enforce that law. I think with regards to how many heads are going to roll, the people that should have been taken out are, first off, those frontline folk that supposedly made the mistake. But then you have the now retired interim head of the IRS saying he didn't think any laws were broken. That very well may be the case, but he certainly didn't make any sincere apologies about what had taken place. So where does that leave the American people with a comfort level with the IRS and its investigative powers? unfortunately, when they did go after or delayed the time for these 501c4s being able to get their applications approved, you look at the imbalance between those organizations that were considered conservative organizations and those that were not, and it's a striking imbalance in terms of time towards approval. And I think that too leaves people with a very uncomfortable feeling about the powers and, if nothing else, the IRS's ability to leave politics out of it and look at some of these applications on their merits.
Kevin, back in the day, you had a reputation for being a mother hen for your newsroom. I mean, you stuck up for your newsroom. What would your reaction be if the Justice Department started pulling records of phone calls from your reporters?
My reaction would be just what the AP's reaction is. Now, the press has been, carrying water for this president since he started running, and anybody who criticized him or bloated government or overregulation or intrusive government was one of those creepy, old, racist, bigoted white guys who probably is running around in the Tea Party. But now the press is the victims of big government, and they don't like it. So suddenly that alliance is shaken a little bit. It may come back. It may come back to a loving, adoring press, but right now you have the press and even some liberal Democrats on Capitol Hill attacking this presidency. And why not? We have another week of, again, lawlessness and corruption, and it's serious. At every level of government, and especially I think at the federal level, there's a process of transactions, and the currency used in those transactions, the main currency, is trust. Right. And once that currency is debased, as it has been here, faith, confidence in the system is lost. It's eroded, and I think that's what's happening with this administration, with the American public, which isn't stupid. They see the president, Hillary, the AG, the outgoing ousted IRS commissioner, Stephen Miller, saying, not me, I'm not responsible, I didn't know anything about it. And my favorite, I didn't know anything about it until I saw it on the news. Well, the people are just not going to buy that, and that doesn't bode well for the rest of this lame duck president's term, or for Hillary Clinton, who didn't look very statesmanlike or presidential when she went on a rant in that hearing. And now I think we're learning now that we have been misled and lied to on all of these scandals.
See, nobody has shown us what in an earlier era we might have called a smoking gun with any of this. Yes, there are problems. There's problems in every administration.
That doesn't absolve these. Everybody else did it.
No, but there have been many fewer in this, and they just happen to have come at the same time. There is one thing about this AP business that I find sort of interesting.
Which might be the biggest scandal of them all.
Well, I don't know if it's the biggest scandal, but it might politically be the most difficult, and for some of the reasons you talked about, that it drives a wedge. But, you were a journalist. I was a practicing journalist for 40 years, I'll admit it. And I was always very nervous about reading any story that wanted me to rely upon some anonymous source. Because it's almost a lazy way of doing journalism. Somebody tells you something and you can't find out have somebody tell you about it on the record so that I can read Joe Smith says this.
Yeah, and we agree on that. I mean,
but wait a minute. But an undercurrent of this is the way that these records were taken from the AP is to try and chill anybody becoming an anonymous source.
That should be of great concern to any journalist.
But you know what? If it's handled correctly, it will make for stronger journalism, because I never liked that kind of journalism anyway.
Well, you're sugarcoating it. You're sugarcoating it. I just want to say that I'm no apologist either, and this president is no Harry Truman who said the buck stops here. Right. Eventually, the buck stops at the Oval Office.
And we have to move on to topic number 2. The National Transportation Safety Board wants to lower the blood alcohol definition of drunk driving. The agency thinks it could be bit of a lifesaver. The legal limit now is 0.08, but NTSB thinks states should drop that to 0.05. Tavern League officials in Wisconsin argue that's extreme. Are we saving lives with the idea, Gerard, or stepping closer to prohibition?
Well, I do see this as a real creep towards prohibition. The federal government has vast powers to compel communities to get on board whatever policy they choose to implement simply by saying, if you want the money, you've got to comply with whatever this policy is. And if the policy direction of the federal administration is going to be that we want to reduce blood alcohol levels before you can be considered legally intoxicated behind a wheel, I think they may push it. Now, the problem that I see in this state is that we don't do enough to go after those who are multiple violators of the current blood alcohol level before getting behind the wheel. And so if we're going to have 0.5 as the level, and you've got folks who are not just violators one time, but multiple times, and we haven't toughened those laws up. There's been some movement toward that, but I don't think enough has been done to go after that group. The other, I'd like to see an expansion of those who are allowed to drink, not drink behind or drink and get behind the wheel of a car, but I'd like to see 18-year-olds drink, because I think that is what prompted this federal overreach in the first place and led them to push using transportation dollars to raise the drinking age to 21. They're not satisfied with that. Now they want to reduce the blood alcohol level.
Is this extreme, Avi?
No. Most of the world, this is the standard, 0.5. If you're going to drive, don't drink. And don't call a law that discourages that prohibition. There is nothing in that law that stops you from drinking. There is something in the law that says don't drive if you drink. If you look at the report that the federal government put out that recommends this, there are real consequences. There are real impairments on the level of 0.5. And you can't argue otherwise. The science is there. It's simple. This should be done because it's the right thing. And to think, by the way, that the federal government will be able to compel this the way it did a little bit when the last time it was lowered. The Obamacare case that the Supreme Court decided is going to make it harder for them to do that. You'll remember that they said the federal government could not be punitive toward states which decided not to expand Medicare, like we have Medicaid. I'm sorry, like Governor Walker made that decision. And if you look at that decision, it starts to chip away at this ability of the state, of the federal government, to put a big financial carrot in front of something it wants done. I think that's a problem. I think calling it prohibition is a problem, but I think it should be done because I think it's the right thing.
Kevin,
it's simple. If you're going to drink, don't drive.
And nobody disagrees with that. Here's my take. It's not prohibition. Darn close. Darn close. Now, I worked in the state Senate last time this issue came up, and the debate was whether we should lower the drinking, the blood alcohol level content from 0.10 to 0.08. And there were a lot of phony speeches in the legislature about this will be a lifesaver, and we need to make our roads safer and get these people off the highways and freeways. Let me tell you, the real motivation to pass that bill and put the law into place making Wisconsin 0.08 was not, posing for holy pictures and safer streets. It was the fact that the federal government did indeed have a gun to the heads of Wisconsin, saying that if you don't pass this, we will take away your federal highway aid. And I'm sorry, Avi, with what's been going on in Washington, D.C. as of late, I have no faith or confidence that suddenly that the federal government is going to relinquish their strong arm tactics. I believe that they will indeed force states to go along with 0.05. And I agree with Sheriff David Clark, who this week said, look, this misses the point. My deputies are not out on the highways pulling people over for 0.05. They are pulling over people for probable cause at an average blood alcohol level content of 1.5. Those are the people we should be going after, not casual drinkers who like to go out and have a drink or two at a fish fry or a dinner. We're going to turn innocent people casual drinkers under this new rule or regulation into criminals. I think that's wrong.
Kevin, if you drink a beer and you get in your car and you drive it, you might be the nicest person in the world. You might have the most sterling, civic responsibility. You're raising your family. You're paying taxes. You go to church every Sunday, but you're not innocent. The science.
It's not a crime to have a drink and get behind the wheel of a car.
Not now, no.
Because you are not impaired. I'm sorry.
No,
there are plenty of people who can do what you just said, Avi, and they get behind a wheel and they are just fine. They are not a menace on the freeway.
The science is against you, Kevin.
And on that note, we have to move on now to topic number 3. Governor Walker wants to freeze tuition in the University of Wisconsin system for the next couple of years. He also wants to impose some additional spending cuts, and he already has some bipartisan support. Why? Because an audit reveals the UW system has been keeping hundreds of millions of dollars in reserve, while students and their families have been digging deeper to pay for school. UW-Madison itself is also feeling some public pressure to give more state students a spot in freshman classes rather than granting a good portion of those seats to kids from out of state, even out of the country. Kevin, UW system has some explaining to do with regards to this surplus.
Well, they do have a lot of explaining to do, and they've had time to explain it. But like the Obama administration does this, not me, we didn't do anything wrong, everything's okay, when, the house of cards is falling. Over the years, historically, the UW system has played the woe is me, the poverty game, all right? They've been crybabies. When, over the longest period of time, with all types of legislatures and governors, the state has been very kind and generous monetarily to the system. And what happens? We have this slush fund, and it is a slush fund, and at the expense of mom and dad at home paying these high tuition rates that weren't necessary. I don't think the governor goes far enough. He's saying freeze tuition. I say to make amends to the folks that you basically robbed, I say lower tuition levels over the next couple of years to make up for what has happened here, because there's no excuse to be sitting on this stash of money, this huge stash of money, and to say it's not enough, we need to raise tuition. And then after this revelation is revealed, they still don't get it. Well, we don't have enough money. We still need more money, and we may have to raise tuition again.
Kevin,
do they think we're stupid?
Kevin,
I think they do.
They have 3 months cash reserve.
That's too much.
Excuse me. Any well-run organization is going to. What would the legislature have said if they'd come to them and said, "Whoops, we don't have any money"? I'm wondering what the former regent, my good friend here, Mr. Randall, has to say about this.
The problem is not with keeping a cash reserve. I think that's prudent business practice.
It's not a slush fund. It is a very prudent business
practice. The problem
practice.
has been with the transparency with which the administration, the UW system administration, first off created those reserves, and then how they tried to articulate how those reserves were going to be spent. You had, in the last 2 years, beginning with the time Governor Walker was elected, these reserves explode. And there was no real effort on the part of the UW's leadership to explain why they dispersed those funds in thousands of different accounts, not in just a handful of accounts, but thousands of accounts. And then they couldn't explain why the aggregate had ballooned so much in the last 2 years. And that left suspicions with the legislature that still haven't been addressed. I think the problem...
Did this exist when you were a member of the board? I mean, did you have some concerns about the lack of transparency?
Well, no. Transparency, no. The reserves existed. They certainly weren't sufficient reserves. But what made this process that they are undergoing now one of suspicion, leading ultimately to a lot of mistrust of system administration, was the explosion of the amount of the reserves and their inability not to be able to explain how those reserves
and having worked in the legislature, I can tell you that no matter what state agency you're talking about, UW system, if you are not forthcoming and honest and answer questions and submit data, you're going to raise suspicions,
but
and you're going to have legislators who are not going to look kindly upon your operation.
This money isn't hidden. It was a legislative, an arm of the legislature that found it and said it was there.
The legislature
all right, but wait a minute.
To uncover this.
That's fine, but it's not hidden. It's not like it's in somebody's back pocket and we don't know it's there. Furthermore, if you were running UW and you had seen what this governor has been doing to education funding in the state,
stop right
would
there.
you wait a minute? Wait a minute.
I'll answer this.
And you want to prudently be sure that you're going to be able to fulfill your mission. Wouldn't it be prudent to try and put away a little bit more money than perhaps when you were on the board and you had a governor who was more friendly to economic,
and we do
higher
have
education?
to move on to topic number 4. Tragedy, as I see it, was the families that had to make some tough decisions, not knowing whether they can afford.
That's why help them out now. Lower the tuition.
A different kind of boot camp is being held this weekend in northern Wisconsin. About 90 activists are gathering north of Wausau to learn the latest techniques in passive resistance. The event is sponsored by a group called Central Wisconsin Action Camp. The workshops will involve a variety of training from staging blockades to climbing trees. It's all designed to protest and interfere with plans by a company to start drilling for a mine in Ashland and Iron counties. Your take on this, Mr. Randall?
Well, they've got every right to protest. They've got every right to go out and get the training that they think will lead to an effective protest. I just don't think it's going to be successful. No matter how much training they get, it's still going to be a mine that will be implemented, and ultimately I think people are going to say that they wish that we'd gotten this thing going sooner without the impediments that some of these protesters would like to see occur.
Any chance of success on the part of this?
We don't know what they're going to do. The history would tell us that Gerard is right, that the chances of success are minimal. The chances of them slowing it down probably are fairly high, and it ought to be slowed down. You know, this was rammed through the legislature this time, not last year, but this time. They never went up there and had a hearing to find out what the people up there thought. Maybe this is some of the people up there. There's split opinion up there, I understand that. But some of the people up there who don't like it, this might be a way of them telling it. You know, you can look at this as saying, goodness, Wisconsin's a bad place for business if this stuff's allowed to happen. But you know what? If it results in less polluted drinking water or not having the kind of industrial accident that we saw in business's favorite state of Texas, where the fertilizer plant exploded, by getting people to slow down, take a little time and getting it right, maybe something good will come of it.
Your thoughts, Kevin?
Let them go and picket all they want. That is their right. I'm sure they will be met equally or even in a larger force by the people up there who are desperately crying out for jobs. That's what we want to do. This mining bill that was signed into law will create thousands of high-paying jobs. That should be our priority. Fine, let them picket all they want. But those people up there there wasn't a hearing up there, fine. But those people have made their voices heard loud and clear that they want the jobs that are going to be
Some of them, not all of them.
Okay, now a few more thoughts on the IRS controversy from our colleague Rick Horowitz. Rick counts himself among the appalled, but he's not as quick as some to jump to conclusions, or maybe I should say he's just keeping more options open. Rick?
Okay, let me say it as simply as possible. One-syllable words. You can't do that. It's wrong. You can't single out one side of the political spectrum. Even if you do it as a shortcut, it's wrong. Or because you're overwhelmed by the number of applications and you don't have enough staff and you suspect lots of those groups are dodging the rules. It's wrong. It's also galactically stupid. Our tax system is based on voluntary compliance. You don't get that unless people can be absolutely confident that the IRS is absolutely impartial. The people who violated that trust need to be held accountable, professionally, maybe even criminally. And the IRS supervisors who learned about the improper targeting, tried to rein it in and lost control again, they need to be gone too. Clear enough? Okay. It's just like Nixon and Watergate. Actually, it's nothing like Nixon and Watergate. I realize the word Nixonian gets thrown around these days like the word Nazi gets thrown around as an all-purpose overheated insult. It doesn't make it even close to accurate. Then you've got people like Karl Rove saying Barack Obama is a disengaged and distant president. That's Rove speak, you understand, for there's not a shred of evidence that Obama had anything to do with this mess or even knew about it. Disengaged. Of course, if Obama hadn't been disengaged from the IRS, Rove would be calling him the micromanaging mastermind. Clever, that Rove. Actually, hold that thought. So who was behind the whole targeting thing? Well, if you were doing this as a Law and Order episode, you'd have to look at motive. Who'd want to stick it to the Tea Party? The White House? Sure. Congressional Democrats? Sure. Are they the only ones? Hardly. The people most worried about the Tea Party are other Republicans, establishment Republicans. They're the ones who have nightmares about primary challenges. They're the ones who know that Tea Party candidates probably cost them control of the Senate in 2010 and 2012. But don't take my word for it. Karl Rove has said exactly the same thing plenty of times. That's right, George Bush's top strategist has been one of the Tea Party's loudest critics. Did I mention that the head of the IRS during the time in question was a George Bush appointee? I'm just saying.
Thank you, Rick. That's it for Interchange this week. It was great having you with us.
Good job.